Thank you for joining us today. Today is the 29th of September, and what we're going to do is review the criteria for your 2.1 assignment and some of the details that you'll need for the 2.2 solution. I've just posted a 2.1 assignment, and it's inside the Blackboard. And so there is a PDF just like the one shown. And what you're seeing here from what's been posted here are 3 different short scenes, captured video from the virtual machines. So you're going to conduct some network setting changes, and you can basically follow along with the recording. And in order to create a recording for a virtual machine, and this is just a continuation of the viewing options that we covered inside. Last week we showed you that when you go inside of a virtual machine, you have options to view it in different ways. And here you see the option for recording and to take a screenshot. So when you take a screenshot, essentially what happens is that it captures a PNG file, and that's what you see shown here. So screen 1, screen 2, and screen 3 were captured using this option for taking a screenshot. Any questions about how we want you to capture screenshots with your login? And then this recording feature was turned on, and it allows you to capture actions that are taken on your virtual machine. And instead of creating an MPG file or other video formats, it creates a web media file, scene 1, scene 2, and scene 3. And what happens is that when you so why do we have both? Well, the video capture is not as high in terms of resolution. So the screen capture does a better job of portraying specific things. There's better resolution, so you have clarity, right? And when you're watching the web video, sometimes it has sound, sometimes it doesn't. Now, I've got my sound all the way up, right? So I didn't capture sound while I was capturing a video of what I'm doing with my machine, but I captured the steps that I want you to follow as you complete the assignment for the first assignment for module 2, right? So I'm showing how to adjust by right-clicking the title bar of the command prompt, where you can set different colors and different font sizes. And then as this is implemented or executed, basically what you'll see next is that it's much easier to make out. Can everybody see now? It's much easier to make out, right, what you're viewing. So part of the challenge for working with virtual machines is being able to get in them and access the features and work with them. And it's just practical things, right? Now, we did say that, so I'm going to pause this. Any questions about the purpose of the WebM files, the web media files that are in Blackboard?
No, so we're just following along with the web media file, but recording at the same, like record that too and upload it for you as well, or we're just following along and we're just taking the screenshot, the PNG file?
That's a good question. So what you're doing is watching each of the web media files and then following the same steps to perform the tasks. So basically, as you watch each screen, as you watch each segment of web media, it walks through the steps in order to be able to get a final screenshot, right?
Mm.
And then it
Yeah.
says, then use the virtual machine view menu to take a screenshot and save this to your local desktop. It should look like this, right? So
Right.
assignment document, the assignment document explains what you're doing. And then you have these examples to follow along, right? And
Right.
we wanted you to see just what's possible with VirtualBox in terms of media capture and snapshots as a part of the viewing features and functionality for the environment.
Okay. Okay. But so we don't have to do the recording, just follow the recording and then take the screenshot.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
So what we want to do is, and you know, here it says 2019, in your case, it'll be 2022, right? And you want to ensure that the network adapter settings show that it is attached to NAT. All right, so let's talk about that. We were addressing how network interface settings can be adjusted with the settings of a network, right? And it says open a command prompt using run as administrator, then show large font. So let me go into my virtual machine, right? And if I go in here, now obviously one thing that may happen is that as you begin to work with your virtual machine, if it's been sitting dormant for a while, it may say that it needs to reboot because there are updates that it posted, and so you want to do that kind of thing. In our machine settings right now, we have our network configured to be a bridged adapter, which means that my local machine is used as a bridge so that the virtual machine can gain access to the host network environment. So my laptop host is connected to Buck's Wi-Fi, right? If I look at Buck's Wi-Fi, and I basically go in here and check out the properties, what I find is that I'm sitting on a public IP address, right? So my laptop is connected to the Buck's Wi-Fi network, and I have a 146.226 public network address, right? Everybody sees that. Okay, now normally when you're at your home and you're using a private local network, you would see something like 192.168, something like that, right? And the thing that I want to share with you is that when we adjust this setting right here for bridging the adapter, we're saying I want to use my laptop network card as a bridge to the host network that's connected to my laptop, right? That's what bridged means. So if I go into here, I'm going to say okay here. If I go into here and I look at my local server dashboard, one of the things that you're going to find about servers is that it's very important. It's very important when you use a server, and this is just something I would share with you now. When you first installed your server 2022 system, it automatically assigned a computer name, and it used the default workgroup name of workgroup. This is not a very good thing because most hackers know that, okay, if it's not a part of a domain, what workgroup is a new device on a network? What is it part of? And by default, the name of the workgroup is literally workgroup. So what you can do is change some settings. But if you look and you see in here, it says the DHCP has assigned the IPv4 address and IPv6 is enabled. You also see that the time sync is different, right? And that's not the best thing in the world. And although I've used my license to activate this thing, if I want my virtual machine to work right, especially with my local machine? Do I want it to be 3 hours different in the time zone? Probably not, right? So one thing I would advocate, when was the last time we installed the updates? Well, on the 22nd, so that's not too far along, but let's make some changes here. And then I want to show you what IP address we have on our server. So I have a need to change this to our time zone, which is 4 hours less than Greenwich Mean Time. That's why it's a -4. It's the same as Georgetown, La Paz, San Juan, and Manaus, Brazil, right? So San Juan is a good option to choose. If you're following along with your own virtual machine, it would be good if you made this change while we're doing it. So before you attempt the 2.1 solution, you should perform the same steps that I'm doing. By the way, if you have not already checked to see if your host machine has been updated and whether or not your virtual box should be on 6.1.38. So there's another thing that happens when you're updating if you don't have everything in sync, the extensions and the new version, a lot of things get squirrely. On my host laptop, when I went to my updates option and ran updates, I'm still sitting on the version we call 2.1H2. So I know you remember doing this before when we were optimizing your PC, right? So you optimized your personal technology. The OS build is now 2006. It's 19044, but it's 2006. So you want to make sure that your version matches this one and that you're sitting on the .38 version of VirtualBox. And that's going to be very important, right? So that's one important thing you want to do before you get started. So while I'm on my machine, I've adjusted the time. So if I refresh this, what I should see now is Georgetown, La Paz, Manaus, and San Juan. Everybody see what happened there? It didn't display until I did this. I'm going to do this and go inside my network connection for my virtual machine. And I'm going to go to properties and I'm going to disable IPv6. It's a long story, but basically, unless your internet service provider and your local network uses IPv6, the version 6 of the IP network protocol, you should disable it. Any questions about this? Okay, so we want this to have an automatically obtained IP address and DNS servers, so we're going to leave that. So now, when I go back and I refresh this, I should see the IPv6 drop off, right? Everybody with me? Okay. Now, one last change I'm going to want to make, and then I want to take work group and the name and click on it and change it. Now, I don't want to change it here because if I change it here, I'm just changing the description. You want to click the change button. This happens all the time. People say, oh, I changed my computer name, and it still has this gobbledygook randomly assigned computer name. I want you to pick, let's pretend that we're going to create the anime work group, and I claimed Goku, okay? Everybody with me? So I'm going to use Goku, and my work group is anime. And I would encourage you to do something similar, right? Change your work group so it's not the default. Give it a name that's recognizable for you. Then use your favorite anime character. Now, if you don't like that, pick Lord of the Rings and your favorite Hobbit or your favorite dwarf or your favorite elf or your favorite, whoever, right? Your favorite wizard. Star Wars, your favorite hero, or villain. Okay. Now, when you do this, it's going to say, oh, I need to reboot my system. The good news is working with virtual machines, that happens pretty quickly, but we're not done yet.
Excuse me, Professor. So when we rename the computer name, it's fine to just leave that, one capital letter, rest lowercase, but the work group should always be in caps.
Well, that's a great question. So when you attempt to use different case sensitive names,
Yeah.
it puts everything in caps.
Mm.
So it's a throwback to something called NT Land Manager or NTLM. In order to be compatible with older domains and work groups, it uses all caps for the work group name as a convention. Now, that doesn't mean that it would fail necessarily if you found a way to use lowercase. And I will tell you that sometimes it's considered a good convention to use all lowercase names for the computer name. I like mixing it up sometimes, right? So I could change this and make this a lowercase G, and then and you see it's grayed out. I won't be able to do that. If I change that later on, you'll see it may not even change to lowercase because the computer name considers a capital G and a lowercase g
Different.
to be the same thing. It's not case sensitive.
Oh, it's not case sensitive.
Not case sensitive, but when it comes to the work group name, it tends to default to use all caps. So,
okay.
And I have to apply this change. Now, why am I doing these things before I even get into the assignment? It's simple. You have a virtual machine that you built with a server operating system, and it's always a good idea to statically assign a fixed IP address to a server and give it a name so that the name does not change and the IP address does not change. Now, why are we going through this exercise? Because it's also common when there are updates for some settings to automatically reset to defaults so that instead of being bridged, it's NATed. And when you NAT, it's like connecting it to a Wi-Fi router where all of a sudden everything's 192.168. Whatever. And it's a local internal address. And there are 3 address ranges in particular that are designated for private internal non-routable networks. You'll see what I mean by that in just a minute. So I'm going to close this and it says, oh, you have to restart. I'm going to restart later because I just want to see what this address is. I want to see what it is. And I could do that by closing this and going to my settings and using what I just did on my laptop, where I go to network, and then I go to Ethernet, and I want to see the options. Well, if I go to status, I should be able to scroll down. Where is this? Usually it shows you what your IP address is. Is that in here? Change adapter options. So if I double click this, I can click the details option and it'll show me what my IP address is. Now my server, another method you can use is ipconfig. So in the exercise, in the activity, we want you to type in CMD, and we want you to change the options. So I'm going to pin it to my start menu, and I'm going to run it as administrator. And I'm also going to adjust this so it's easier to see. So that's what you just saw in the other video. I'll make this 24 and I'll change the color of the text to yellow. Something like yellow. So that's a little easier to read now, yeah? I think. So if I do this, I get the same information. I get 146.226. Another way to state this is that I have successfully bridged my network from my virtual machine through my laptop onto the Bucks Wi-Fi network. Now, that's the default setting that we want you to use most of the time. And especially when it comes to a server, it would be best to pick an IP address and then statically assign it so it doesn't change. That's another topic for another time. That's a more advanced topic. What I'm going to do now is reboot my system so that those changes take effect. And as soon as I do this, if I say restart and planned, it should kick off very quickly, right? I should see another login prompt pretty fast. In your assignment, we want you to experience the different options to change configuration settings. And while this thing is booting up, I want to talk to you about machine settings that you can use to shut down the system. So as soon as this thing kicks into gear here, there's a lot of confusion about what powers off a machine. And this causes a lot of trouble with virtual systems because sometimes we close the window, and if we're not careful, depending on the default settings, it'll keep running in the background while your laptop gets slower and slower and slower. We can choose to save the machine state, and that's like hitting the pause button. So saving the machine state is the same thing as hitting the pause button. If I was in the process of doing something and I wanted to stop it and just resume my work, I could save the machine state, and it would, or whatever it's in the process of doing, it would pause that virtual system, and then it would write it to memory. And then the next time I started the virtual machine, I couldn't tell that I ever stopped. It would pick up right where it left off. That includes whether you were logged in, whether you were in the process of downloading something, all that. If I send the shutdown signal, what I'm telling the virtual machine is that I would like it to gracefully close. That's the equivalent of doing this, where you tell it to shut down, and that's sending a shutdown signal to the operating system. But this one, this last one, is like the worst case scenario. When you power off your machine, that is the same as pulling the battery out of the laptop or jerking the cord out of the wall. If it's a PC, it literally cuts off the power to the system, and data corruption is possible. Now, this is to be used as a last resort only when the machine is completely unresponsive. Now, you'll notice that there are some other options from other menus. So if I go to the machine menu, after it's running, here I have the pause button, which is like capturing the state, yeah? Capturing the state of where it is right now, and I haven't logged in yet. So if I did this, and I issued my Control-Alt-Delete, so I had a login prompt, but then I paused it, I could come back to this next week and I would still have my login prompt. I would not lose my login prompt, the cursor would still be blinking there. Reset means I'm resetting the local virtual machine. So if I were in the process of making changes and I thought those changes were scrambling the eggs, I could use the reset option and it would reverse the changes that I had just done. Detach the GUI means I want to run my virtual machine apart from my host laptop. ACPI shutdown is the same as giving it a graceful command to shut down with the start menu, right? So these other options are a little different. Reset can help you if your machine locks up after changes. You could try the reset button, and that would reverse the changes that you had just made to the virtual machine, and it would reset the virtual machine, right? Now, detach the GUI is the same as this option here, right? So it's not showing right now because I have a machine running. Detachable start, right? So I'm detaching the screen interface from my laptop. That means that my virtual machine isn't going to go into power save mode because I'm using a laptop. So that's a useful feature, and that's how we usually advocate people getting into their virtual machines. Are there any questions about the power options for the virtual machine and how they differ? Okay, these are these are in your book in the reading section, right? So in the section we needed you to read, that's in there. Okay, so I have a laptop that's sitting on 146.226. And in your, if I change the settings now, if I go to the machine and I change the settings, and I tell it to use NAT instead of bridged, what I'm saying is that I want my virtual machine to treat my laptop the same way that your connected devices at home treat your Wi-Fi router. When your connected devices at home interact with the internet, it all looks like one machine, your Wi-Fi router. To the outside world, the only thing it sees, it doesn't see your laptop, your Fire Stick, your smart TV. It doesn't see all those separate devices. It only sees the network address for your Wi-Fi router. That's because the network, the stream of network data is translated into a local internal private network address. When I do this and say okay, and then go in, if I look at my network address now by going to my command prompt and running as administrator, what I see now is something totally different. So what's happening now is that my virtual machine isn't bridging the network through the laptop. It's like it's a parasite. A good way to describe it is that it's sort of like a camouflaged parasite. The network traffic for this virtual machine is translated into the laptop IP address. So to prove this to you, my internal address is 10.2.0.2.15, right? But if I go, like if I go here, well, let's open my laptop. I'm going to open up my laptop IP address. I want you to see this. My laptop, what is it using right now? It's using 196.118, right? Everybody sees that? So when I'm using NAT, what's happening is that I can kind of camouflage my network activity, and the only thing the rest of the world sees is my network address from the laptop. Now that's good and bad. You might want to ask me to prove that. So I'm going to prove it to you. I'm going to go to a site called network-tools.com. It's actually a pretty decent website. I want to start without my data and continue without this. And yeah, confirm and start browsing. Sure. Okay. Everybody with me? So I'm inside my virtual machine. Okay. And what it is supposed to show right now is the 146.226.196.118. Something weird is going on here. Let's try this instead. I'm going to go to GRC shields up. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
It says 196.118, right? And what do I have over here on my laptop? 196.118. So my server virtual machine looks like it's actually my laptop. So that's what NAT does. It translates the address, my real address inside the laptop on this server is 10.0.2.15. And the gateway it uses to connect through my laptop is 10.0.2.2. So there's some networking magic that is not within the scope of our class, but I wanted you to see that. Now, what happens if I do this? And I go back to network and I do this. And I say, okay. That's the same as opening the box of the server, pulling the network adapter, plugging in a different one, and then reconnecting it to the network. So if I repeat this command, oh, look, now I'm on 196.119 instead of 118, right? So now my server is bridged out to the Bucks Wi-Fi network again. So if I do this and hit my refresh button, it's not going to show 118 anymore. It's going to show 119. Or is it? So those results are cached. Those results are cached in here. What I'm going to do is stop this, right? And I'm going to clear the cache. Yeah, that's what I'm going to have to do. Oh, you know what? I'll just close the browser and see if that doesn't do it. So I'll open the browser back up. And I'll go to Google. And then to my GRC shields up. And then when I click into this option and select proceed, and then select all ports, all service ports, I should not see 118. And if I do, it means, wow, there, everybody see? 119. So
Yep.
my server has its own IP address and is viewed and interacted with as if it were any other system on that network. That's what Bridge does. NAT has a totally different effect. It embeds the network traffic inside the host network, right? So it looks and smells just like my laptop. And that's good for hackers. I mean, hackers can kind of hide their identity that way if they understand how to use virtual machines in a very nasty manner. One of the cool things about your network options in VirtualBox is that you can take it a step further. You can create a host-only adapter or a NATed network where you create your own internal NATed network and other machines can talk to this virtual server, but no other machines. If you read about this in your textbook in the reading assignment, it'll tell you how each of these are different. But the two that I want you to know about intuitively is bridged and NATed, because either one of these will allow you to connect to the internet. These other ones will allow you to set up an internal network, but it's not connected through the host to the internet. Does everybody understand? So host only adapter, generic driver, NAT network, cloud network, those you don't get to connect to the internet. You have a local network that starts with this virtual machine, and then you create other virtual machines that can talk to it. So it's kind of creating your own world, internal, like a hidden garden of sorts. Any questions about the network settings and how they differ? So in your assignment, what I want you to do is to check each of these options out and to make those changes, and then to capture the results along the way and post those into a Word document that you submit. And I need you to do that by 11:59 p.m. this Saturday. Are there any questions before we stop our class today? So the extra credit PNG, thank you for asking that, Ray. So you can post extra credit if you prove that you've gone to the trouble of updating your virtual machine. So it's just a habit we want everybody to take up as a reflex. So if you do it anyway, we mentioned at the beginning of the demonstration, right? You should do the updates, right? So now that I have my machine connected to the internet, I should be doing this to see if there are new updates. But I would also encourage you to change the name of your system and make it something sensible, and then disable the IPv6. So those are good things to do. Now, how would we know whether or not you've actually run your updates? Well, it'll say there are no current updates, but the other way to do this is if you click on local server and take a screenshot of this, it'll say last installed updates when. That'll change. If this runs and there are updates, then you'll see a more current date on this other screen. This will update to today. So just to pretend, if there were more updates since the 22nd, I could, or I haven't done this in a while, I'd click check for updates, and then I would see this date change. So as long as it's recently current and you have something like this, you can submit that. And it shows today's date down here, right? So if you capture this and it says last check today, and then I can see down here, that's where we are, then you have it. Now, the best way to capture this screen is not to, I mean, if you do this and you take a screenshot and I look at it, let me put this in a temp folder, right? I'm gonna put this in a temp folder. And then I look at my screenshot in the temp folder. I should, yeah, I do. I see the time and the date, right? Down in the corner. Any questions about what's expected for 2.1? I will have a short video that will accompany the 2.2 solution for this module. So what we want you to do is to go ahead and finish review of the study guide for module 2. And if there's anything you haven't turned in yet for module 1, now is the time to get it done, because we're going to be posting credits soon. Any questions about what we've covered today?
No questions.
Go ahead.